Why is 2 Samuel chapter 7 so significant for understanding King David, understanding God, understanding the Bible, and understanding the messianic expectations? Let's talk about that briefly. In 2 Samuel chapter 7, we have what may be termed David's calling and election made sure. So let's set the context for 2 Samuel chapter 7. David, who has successfully beaten back all the enemies of Israel, there's peace in the land, and he's built himself a palace, and he's protected the city of Jerusalem, and he's looking around and he realizes, you know, I live in a nice home, and yet God himself is living in a tent, this mobile tent, this tabernacle that the Israelites had throughout the wilderness that God had given them, and it's now been at Shiloh. Shouldn't we build a temple for God, a permanent structure? So David wants to build a temple to God, and he talks to Nathan about it. And it's interesting, what we have is something opposite. God comes to David and says, instead of you building me a house, I'm going to build you a house. And it's the same word in Hebrew. In one sense, it means a physical structure or temple. In another sense, it actually means a dynasty. So whereas David wanted to give God a permanent dwelling place, a fixed structure called a temple, God ends up promising David and his posterity a never-ending dynasty, which is where Jesus comes in. Now, I'll point out that the word anointed in Hebrew is Messiah, or Greek, the word is Christ. And so Jesus is the anointed king, the anointed Messiah, the one who's been anointed by God to rule and reign. And we get this promise in 2 Samuel chapter 7 that God will always have a member of the Davidic family be on the throne. That's what God promised. So let's take a look at what is said here. Beginning in verse 12, God says to David, "And when thy days be fulfilled, and thou shalt sleep or die with thy fathers, I will set up thy seed after thee, which shall proceed out of thy bowels, and I will establish his kingdom. And he," this is referring to Solomon, David's son, "he shall build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. I will be his father, and he shall be my son. If he commit iniquity, I will chasten him with the rod of men and with the stripes of the children of men. But my mercy shall not depart away from him, as I took it from Saul, whom I put away before thee. And thine house and thy kingdom shall be established forever before thee, and thy throne shall be established forever." This is crucial because in the Old Testament, there are two covenants that structure so much of what's happening in the narrative. The first one is the Abrahamic covenant, where God comes to Abraham and makes some significant eternal promises to Abraham and all of Abraham's posterity. Now, David gets a similar promise from God right here, and it follows a similar structure, where God is covenantally and legally binding himself to do something for these two faithful men, Abraham in Genesis, David here in 2 Samuel, and for their posterity. As the children of Abraham, we all benefit in the promises that God gave to Abraham of property, posterity, priesthood, prosperity. With David, we all benefit because God has promised that there will be a Messiah, that there will be a Davidic king, that the Davidic kingship will endure forever. And we benefit because the fulfillment of that is Jesus himself. He is the Davidic son, many generations after David, who is the chosen Messiah, who is the king for all of us, for all time. So this covenant pattern in the ancient world is called a royal grant. And let me just read to you a bit about how that works. A king or a god will grant land or some other benefit to a loyal servant for faithful or exceptional service. The grant was normally perpetual and unconditional, but the servant's heirs benefited from it only as they continued their father's loyalty and service. So this royal grant covenant is contrasted with what is called a suzerain vassal treaty covenant, like we have with Moses and the people and God at Mount Sinai, where God says, I've done all these great things for you, saving you out of Egypt. I've been loyal to you. I now have a list of 10 stipulations for you to show love and loyalty back to me. And if you want to be in peace and prosperity in the land, you have to be loyal to me by living these stipulations. In contrast, a royal grant is after long-term faithful service, God says, because of your faithfulness, I'm going to do these things for you. A royal grant is God giving a covenant to people, And in the other covenant, it's us covenanting with God to do things for God because of his faithfulness to us. So it's kind of an inverted relationship. These two covenant patterns are crucial for understanding the Bible because we have these two significant royal grant covenants, Abraham and David, where these long-term enduring promises are made. And then on the flip side, all of us are asked to show our faithfulness back to God so that we can have full access to what he has eternally promised to two of his most faithful servants. So wherever you're at in your life, you can be faithful to God and you can get access to the Davidic covenant because you get access to Jesus, and to the Abrahamic covenant as a child of Abraham. You get the peace and prosperity that God offers to all those who are obedient to him, and that promise will endure through the ages for you, even right now.